Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to BFI Feature Film Festival 2025. I'm Ella Townsend, the Young Talent Coordinator at Film Hub Midlands. I manage and oversee the BFI Film Academy programme for the Midlands region. Today's session is titled Below the Line Crew, focusing on the vital role of makeup and special effects, featuring our talented speaker and BFI Film Academy alumni, Faye Russell. This session explores, have you ever wondered what goes into creating stunning transformations and jaw-dropping effects you see on screen? From making actors look unrecognizable to crafting monsters, aliens, and supernatural creatures, the world of makeup and special effects in film and TV is nothing short of magic. Behind the artistry is a career path that's both creative and technical, and it needs people who are passionate about their craft as they are about storytelling. So now we're going to dive into the dynamic careers of makeup and special effects artist from Faye. So thank you for joining today, Faye. It's really great to have you.
No, thank you for having me. So I just wanted to start off with introducing myself. So my name's Faye, and I'm a hair and makeup artist from Nottingham. And I'm really excited to be talking to you all today. So I'm just going to start off with a little bit about how I sort of got into hair and makeup, and how I started my journey. So like when I was a kid, I was like always really interested in, monsters. That was my sort of big thing. So I always was interested in those sort of things, but I never really thought about that as sort of a career. I was always interested in films. I loved watching films, but never sort of thought, oh, what about that sort of thing? So I started my journey at the BFI Film Academy in 2016, and someone recommended this course to me, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to try it. Why not, sort of thing. So I did that, and that made me absolutely fall in love with the idea of going into film. The course was great. All the knowledge that was handed down to us just made me really think, wow, this could actually be a career option for me. That's where I met Ella as well. So yeah, from there, that kind of made me think, okay, I do want to work in film. So I went and did a degree in film production. And I still kind of didn't know where I sort of fitted into film, but I knew I wanted to do something creative. But I thought, there's lots of people doing short films around me. So I thought that I would try makeup. And let me tell you, I wasn't great when I first started out. But I used to use like eyeshadows for bruising, things like that. But I found that I just really enjoyed the process of applying the makeup and creating these looks. So that made me want to just get better and, get better at my craft and things like that. So I started building up like more of a professional kit. I started doing more shorts and practicing. And yeah, so I just started doing like more research into everything as well. And I was really fortunate then, after I finished my degree, I got onto the BFI Future Skills scheme, and which placed me as a trainee on Willow, which is a Lucasfilm and Disney TV show that came out in 2021. So I was placed in crowd hair and makeup for 6 months, and then I got work in creature effects, which was absolutely, amazing, for 6 weeks as well. And then from that, I just work on like I've worked for BBC. I've done dailies on that with and I've also done BFI funded shorts. And yeah, and I'm still doing short films to this day.
Cool, thank you. So for those who may be interested, so obviously you completed the Film Academy in 2016, 17, and then you went off to university. Where did you go and what did you study to kind of
So
support you?
I went to University of Gloucestershire and I studied a film production degree there, which was great for me really because it allowed me to, work on short films, and I was able to put like sort of skills into practice. Yeah, so really it was a great course.
Amazing. And I know that you mentioned the word dailies. So what is that in terms of like working on a production? Like what does dailies mean?
So dailies is when you are not contracted for the full production. So if you are a daily, you might only be in for say 3, 4 days, might even just be one day. So say the production had quite a few essays which are like supporting artists, and they need a lot of makeup artists in for this day. You might only be contracted on it for those 3 days when it's really busy, and then you might not be needed anymore.
Cool. And from obviously I've known you for quite some time now, Faye. And
Yeah.
when you did the film academy, like sorry, please remind me like how that came about, because obviously it's quite a limited opportunity in terms of those who can apply, who can successfully apply. Like, how did you find out about that?
So I had a friend that had done it the previous year, and she knew that I sort of wanted to do something creative, but wasn't sort of quite sure. So she just said to me, "Why don't you try this?" I did it. It was a great course. So again, that's why I thought, okay, it's local to me, really easy access for me to be able to get to. So I thought I would try it, and like I said, that kicked off my whole journey into film.
Amazing. And from my memory, I believe you were the director on the you were the director on the short film that you were part of in terms of like the team and the story that the film that you were making.
Yeah. So at the start, as I said, I was trying out where I fit. Like I wasn't sure where quite I fitted into film, but I was really interested in it. And so over time I just sort of managed to find the pathway for me, and found where I felt comfortable. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do.
And I can imagine that you learned quite a lot of like transferable skills and knowledge that you were able to apply, like going into university and then progressing on to your the placement and trainee.
Yes, definitely. I mean, a lot of film, as I said before, you're working with so many different people, and just being able to, be able to speak to people, have communication skills. You meet people from all walks of life. So yeah, it's great just to be able to sort of work with so many different types of people, different sort of eras of film as well. It's yeah, great.
Fab. So I obviously have known you a while, so obviously I know what you've been up to and what what your journey's been. But for those who don't know you, I'm aware that you were successful in the LUX Artist Place Trainee Scheme, the placement scheme as well as the ScreenSkills Trainee Finder. Do you want to share a bit more information about that, please?
Yeah, so I've actually put in my little presentation more about mentoring schemes as well. But I was really, really fortunate to be accepted onto the Lux mentoring scheme, where I was placed with a great designer called Louise Coles. And we would have like regular phone calls, and she would offer me career advice. I would say what sort of things I'd be struggling with, and she would be able to point me in the right direction. She would also sort of explain, what a call sheet, and what to sort of what information that I needed to take from that. She would also show me sort of breakdowns of or how she would design a look, if she would do like a lookbook, and all of that sort of information. Yeah, that was a fantastic scheme to be a part of, and it's great to be able to actually learn from people in the industry, people who are at the top of their game, as well. So felt very fortunate to have that.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity. Was that whilst you were at was that whilst you were at university or was that after you graduated?
That was just after I graduated, because I had the unfortunate thing of graduating in lockdown as well. So that was a great thing just to keep my, focus, and feel made me feel quite positive about getting into the industry despite the COVID happening.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really glad that you were able to take part in that and have such a great mentor and ability, like opportunities like those is quite sparse. So, something like that to keep you going through a really challenging time for everyone. Is it worth getting your slides up from Harry if you want to jump into
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Amazing. So do you want to explain that photo just as a little backstory, Faye?
Yeah. So this is a picture from a short film that I did with Ella and the BFI, called The Walk. And this is Adeel and Akhtar, and he is absolutely fantastic. So as well as working in as a trainee in film, sometimes I'll be a makeup artist or designer on like a short film, which is quite sort of different than working on bigger sort of productions, because often it's just me. I'm the only person responsible for how things look. Um, um, I've got to make sure that I've got everything in my bag. I've got to think about the continuity. I've got to think about, you know, yeah, there's just so much, so much to think about when it's just you, reading the script as well. But yeah, I love doing short films as well. It's quite rewarding being able to say, oh, okay, I did all of that.
Yeah, it was really great to work with you, especially like through your progression and your journey, and then, working outside of the Film Academy short course parameters. But yes, obviously you're here to talk about being a trainee. So do you want to jump into the next slide for
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about how to become a trainee. It can be really, really hard when you're sort of starting out to know what to do and where to go with things. So I just thought I would write. Sorry, I was just going to move it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So I wanted to just say, like, there's no sort of set way in going into makeup, but I would highly recommend going to a reputable, makeup school specifically for hair and makeup, because often if you learn from other sources, you might not be getting the right information. You are being taught industry standard techniques, and having a CV is super important. Making sure it's up to date is essential, and it's like clear and easy to read as possible, because if you are sending it to designers, often they've got really busy schedules. They might not have the time to be able to read a really big CV. So making it just clear and easy to read is the main thing that I could recommend, really. um, yeah, and having a portfolio as well that I just mentioned, just making sure that it's best to have quality photos. So if you've got pictures of, say, maybe a 1940s updo, just making sure you've got clear pictures. And it's better to have 10 really good pictures than having 50 ones but you're not quite happy with as well. So yeah, quality over quantity, definitely. And the other main thing I want to talk about is networking. So net film is often just about word of mouth and recommendations. So if you have been working with an artist and they say, oh, this person is a great trainee, you are much more likely to get hired onto another job. So just making sure that whoever you're talking to, you're being the best you can be, really, because it is definitely a lot about being recommended to another artist or another production. So yeah, I think that's everything for this slide. Okay, so on this slide, I have put down some of the main sort of places which are reputable schools and places to go for hair and makeup. So you've got the Iver Academy. These are mostly London based. I was really fortunate to get a BAFTA grant to be able to go to the Iver Academy. So I got given, I think, £2,000 to be able to do one of the short courses there, which I feel really lucky to be able to have had, because These are private courses and they can, for the longer courses, be more expensive, but what you are learning is from industry professionals, and you are learning everything that you would need to start your journey in hair and makeup. But yeah, I've mentioned as well that there's a few ScreenSkills also offer bursaries to go to these, and obviously the BAFTA one that I've just mentioned as well. So there are, if it's not feasible for you to be able to afford these, there is help available. So I'd definitely look into that. Yeah, so these are more for all-rounder courses that I've mentioned, but I've also, on the next slide, if you're more sort of interested in prosthetics, which was kind of what I was slightly more interested in, like the making the monsters and things like that, I've also put in some courses for more prosthetic based things. So Bentley Advanced Materials, I've done a course with them and they were absolutely fantastic. They teach you sort of mold making and how from scratch to make things like a prosthetic nose. So I do highly recommend that course. There's Davy Jones Makeup School, which I think is more towards Liverpool area, Crip Studios, and the Prosthetic Studio as well are other great places to go for, prosthetic learning. And also I've put in, there's some great online resources for prosthetic work as well. So you've got the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, which you can do like an online subscription for. And it's quite affordable. I think it's around £20 a month. So, and you can have unlimited access to everything. It's amazing. It's a very, very good resource. And then you've also got Gorton Studio, which is Neil Gorton, who's a big prosthetic artist in the UK. He has his sort of online studio, which you can also pay a prescription for. And that's also an amazing resource as well. What I will say is just be careful with learning things on YouTube, because often if you're not learning from the sort of right resources, you can be taught, bad techniques or things that can often be quite dangerous. So just making sure that you're learning from reputable places is so important. There are some great resources on YouTube, but there are also some poor ones that do teach you very like unsafe practices. So that's just something to be aware of. And then I think, yep, that's everything for this slide. So I just thought I'd put in some really good resources for reading. So these are all sort of great books that are for more makeup and hair and wigs. So the Fashions in Hair is a really, really good book. I know this is quite expensive now, but if you could maybe find a library that has it, it's a fantastic book. It's got so many illustrations of hair over the years. So often it's a great book for sort of referencing. So if you've got, you're doing a short film and it's, 1920s, it's great just to be able to look and go, oh, this might be quite a good sort of hairstyle to have. So yeah, great book that. The Makeup Artist Handbook is like quite a common, it's almost like the holy grail book to have when you're starting out. So that's also a fantastic book to have, especially when you're starting out. It kind of covers so many different topics. The Practical Guide to Wig Making and Wig Dressing, I have this book, and again, that's a fantastic resource if you're more interested in we call it postiche, like if you, the more sort of making side of things. So if you want to make wigs or make hair pieces, mustaches, sideburns, things like that, it's great to teach you how to knot wigs. So I highly recommend that book if you're more interested in the making side of things. And the last one, Training to Trainee, is quite a new book. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but everyone's sort of raved about this book. And it's a great resource for sort of almost like a guide for everything you would want to know when you're starting out in film. It goes through jargon of what, you know, what a honey wagon is, and I'll explain what a honey wagon is, and that's the toilets on set. But yeah, all of everything that can prepare you for starting your journey out in film. So yep, these are great books. And then I've also, on the next slide, put in some great books more for prosthetics. The Special Makeup Effects for Stage and Screen is an absolutely fantastic book. I know that there has been quite a few editions of this book, and I think this might be the most up-to-date one now, because obviously over the years, you know, the way things are being made is slightly changing, especially in prosthetics. 3D printing is becoming, you know, and 3D scanning is becoming more prominent. So yeah, I would definitely recommend getting the sort of most up-to-date version of that book. And then the big one that I do want to mention is the Special Effects Guide of Real Human Wounds and Injuries. So this one is an absolutely, you know, great reference book, but I will warn you, it does have some quite graphic images as you go through the book. However, this is such an amazing book to have when you're starting out, because prosthetics is all about trying to make something as realistic as possible. You want the look that you're creating to be as lifelike and realistic as possible. So the only way that you are going to be able to do that is to be able to look at a real injury and try and replicate it to the best of your ability. So this is a fantastic resource for that. I think that's everything on this slide. Yes. Oh, and I've just put in some other sort of useful links and pages that I found really, really useful when I was sort of starting out. So Pam is like a makeup supplier, but if you follow their Instagram page, they often post like really useful tips, and so they have the famous Tuesday tips. So every Tuesday, you know, one of them will talk about a certain product or the best way to use that product. But it's just very, very good to be able to see all of these little handy tips from professionals who, so yeah, that I would say that's a fantastic resource. There's quite a few Instagram accounts as well that do have advice for people starting out. So again, the same person that wrote the Training to Trainee book has an Instagram, and they often put Q&As on there also. Makeup Trainees is also a really good Instagram as well, where people can ask advice to makeup artists in the industry. So that's another great way to be able to, you know, speak to someone who is a professional in that and be able to ask advice. And there are also podcasts as well. So I've put in Battles with Bits of Rubber, which is Stuart Bray talking about prosthetics, a lot of like anecdotes about films that he's worked on, and often has guests, and they are so interesting to listen to. But often they might just drop a little bit of information about a product they used, and you go, oh, okay, and I would write that down and do some research onto it. And that's also the same with the Last Lux podcast as well. Yeah, I think that's everything on this slide. Okay, so where to look for work and opportunities. Again, when you're starting out, it can be really, you know, a bit of a minefield to figure out where to look for things. It can be quite overwhelming. So I thought I'd just post a few things of like what to look out for. So you've got like Facebook groups are great, because often, you know, crew will post when they're needing a hair and makeup artist, and you can apply through that. But it's great because you're able to just see lots of different jobs. So I've posted a couple of links, not links, the names of the groups on there, so you could go and join those. Work shadowing as well. Some studios and organisations, they will offer work shadowing opportunities, and that's a great way to shadow a makeup artist and just see what they're doing and just learn. So I think work shadowing is a great way as well. Yeah, following hair and makeup designers, that's a big thing that you should do. You want to keep interested in what a makeup designer might be doing and what they're working on as well. And often they can, if they're needing a trainee or a makeup junior or artist, they will say, I'm needing an artist for this and this date, and you're able to sort of send your CV across. So that's definitely important. Yeah, so makeup conventions as well. There's quite a few makeup conventions in the UK, such as IMATS, United Makeup Artist Expo as well. And then you've also got the prosthetic event, which is more, prosthetic based. But going to these is great because, there will often be talks with makeup artists and makeup designers, and it just keeps you in the know. You know what's going off in the industry. You're speaking to people who are also in the same pool as you. So yeah, it's great for networking. I would highly recommend. It's a great day out. For a great day out. Yep. Trainee schemes. So as I said before, I was really fortunate to get onto the Future Skills, BFI program, and that, absolutely sort of transformed my career. But I've also been on ScreenSkills Trainee Finder, which is also, a great trainee scheme as well. There's a new one out, which is the Crew HQ trainee program at Warner Brothers. So that sounds very exciting as well. But these highly recommend, going into doing a training scheme as well. Can be a great way to just get your foot in the door. And then, as mentioned before, mentorship programs, again, they can be so useful. So they have the BEC2. So BEC2 is the union for hair and makeup. And they offer mentoring programs where you can be paired up with a hair and makeup artist. And again, it's just invaluable to be able to speak to someone who's actually been through this journey themselves. They've been a trainee, they know what it's like. They can help you, figure out what to do next. So yeah, I think mentorship schemes are so important. So if you can get on one of those, yeah, that's great. So yep, I think that's everything for this slide. Okay. So this is just about sort of being a trainee and what to expect when you're going on to your sort of first day. And I just wanted to speak about the hierarchy of film. So you have your head of department, which is your makeup designer, and they are sort of responsible for how the makeup department runs and responsible for sort of creating the looks for the TV show or the film. And then so underneath the makeup designer, you will have a supervisor, and they just support the head. But however, often you'll have sort of two departments of hair and makeup. So you'll have main team, which will handle the actors or the main cast, and then you will have crowd, which will be responsible for the essays, which I've mentioned are the supporting artists and background artists. So you can either be a makeup main team trainee or you can be a crowd trainee. And then underneath you'll have makeup artists that will work underneath the head and the supervisor. And then you will have underneath the makeup artist, you will have a junior makeup artist who are still, they're on their way to being a makeup artist, but then they're not quite a makeup artist yet. And then underneath you'll have a makeup trainee. And trainees are just mainly there to learn and just like help and assist the makeup designer as well. I think that's, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask how many. So obviously, depending on production, and you may answer this later on, so I apologize if I'm kind of jumping the gun here. But depending on what type of production you're on, whether that's like is it low or high form, or you kind of those like bigger to smaller productions, like how many of each will be on a production in terms of like the makeup designer and then like an artist, junior artist, and then the trainees, like how many are there of one another in a team?
That's a good question. So it's say if you were in crowd hair and makeup, them if you have a lot of essays in, there's huge crowd days, you would have more makeup artists in to make sure they're, out of the door and on set in time. But you would always have one head of department. When I worked on Willow, there was one head of department and a supervisor, and then there was also a crowd supervisor. So I worked in crowd. Yes. So just it really depends on the budget as well, like of how many people would be hired and how many people, how many main casts there are and how many essays there are as well. So that can sort of be dependent.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I think that is everything for this section. Okay, so I just wanted to do a little bit about working in the makeup department, sort of little things that you will expect to have. So your kind of holy grail is having a call sheet. So usually you would get the call sheet the night before the shoot. So you will receive this, and this kind of tells you everything that you need to know about the next working day, like where the closest hospital is. It's got every little bit of information that you could possibly need. Tells you what time you need to be there, what time your actor is due into makeup. So yeah, it's your everything that you need. That's your most important sort of thing. So just wanted to mention as well, like you might have a different call time to the rest of the crew. So you have a unit call, and that's the time when most people need to be getting on set and getting ready to start shooting. But hair and makeup, as I've said before, tend to do longer hours than most other departments. So for example, so this happened quite a lot when I was on Willow. Most people needed to be in for say 8 o'clock, but we had 60 extras that might need to be on set for that time. So we would have to come in, say, 2 to 3 hours earlier to be able to get everybody ready for that time. So that you can, often have a lot earlier of a day than some other departments as well. And then also often you may have, extra time at the end of your day because you do something called de-rig. And de-rigging is when, you've wrapped on set, everybody's going back to base, but they might need to come to your trailer or wherever you're based and have their wig taken off, have their makeup taken off as well. You put any sort of hair pieces or anything specific to them in a bag to make sure that that's ready for the next day if they're in. So yeah, and I wanted to just make people aware. So if you're working in things like creature effects, those days can be longer, obviously, because the application process can be longer. And also, so for example, when I worked in creature effects on Willow, we had big hairy trolls. and the big hairy trolls. Obviously the application process is quite extensive. They've got false teeth, they've got false nails. You have to apply the actual prosthetics to them, so it can take, you know, quite laborious to try and get all of that on. And also at the end of the day, when everybody's wrapped and most people are sort of getting ready to go home, they have to come back to you and you've got to take all of that off. So, and you know, especially when you're working with like medical grade adhesive glues, you have to be so careful. There is a person underneath all of that. You need to be as gentle as possible as well. So that can be quite a slow sort of process trying to get all of those off. So I think when I for a few of the days, I was coming in at about 4:30 in the morning and I was leaving at 8 o'clock at night. So that is just something that, you know, to be aware of. But I wouldn't change anything. It was magical working in Creature Effects. So yeah, I think that is everything for this part. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about I think there's a misconception that as a trainee that people think when you go into makeup, you're just going to be doing makeup as a trainee. But it doesn't quite work like that on most jobs. You know, there are like ropes to learn. You are also assisting to try and make sure the department runs smoothly as well. You know, so there are certain things. These are just like a couple of things that I ended up doing. You might have other duties on top, but generally, like, so if you have in the morning during the call, which is the time that you're sort of you've got all of your actors or your essays in, and they're all and everybody is, you know, applying, or the makeup and all the artists have got somebody in their seat. You might be just helping them, you know, passing them pins up to try and make it a quicker process, and you're just assisting the artists. You'll be often making a good cup of tea or a good cup of coffee goes a long way. If you can make a cracking cup of tea, you know, that does go a long way. So that might be one thing that you're doing. You know, if you're assisting in a prosthetic application, you know, it might get a little bit messy. So your job might just be to help tidy up, try and keep things clean and clear. So when I was a trainee as well, I was often in charge of like doing the continuity. So you have like continuity notes as well, which you would, during the call, you would give to the artist, and that will it'll be like a step-by-step instruction of, okay, this is how to do the braiding or whatever. So, you know, you need to make sure that they are filed and organized, and you're giving the correct piece of information to the artist as well. So yeah, continuity, and you're often taking photos as well, like having sort of a logbook of taking like a front facing picture, a side facing picture, and have like a 360 view. So just making sure that they're all organized as well is really, really important. Yeah, keeping on top of stock, and like all the products. You know, if you're running out of a certain product, you know, telling your designer you need to like order more, sort of thing. Usually on a makeup bus, you'll have a washing machine as well. So just making sure, you know, keeping things sanitary. If you've had an apron on someone, making sure that gets washed properly, etc. Okay, so you might be prepping artist bags. So on certain productions, you might have separate bags for each main cast, which has all of the products that artist might need for that look. And also I've put the mothership bag in, so I'll mention what the mothership bag is. So usually when you know, the makeup artists go to set, you have a mothership bag which has everything you possibly might need, you know, tissues, wet wipes, so and that's just perfect to have, because if the schedule changes and all of a sudden they might need like to be a bit more dirty, you've got a dirt palette in that bag. You don't have to like faff. So it's great to have one of those on set. So you might be responsible just to making sure that that is stocked. There's nothing missing, or if anything's been used, you replace it. So yeah, that's also very important. But I think that's sort of everything for this slide. Okay, so I wanted to do a bit about positive attributes of a trainee, and so just having a positive can-do attitude just goes a long way. Just trying to be helpful. If you're standing around and you don't know what to do, ask, can I help? Is there anything I can do to help? So being as helpful as you can be goes a long way. Being friendly, just trying to be as helpful as you can, honestly. Having good organizational skills, as I said before, you can often be handling really important files. So just making sure that you know what you're doing and everything is organized is super important. Good communication skills, yes, that's incredibly important as well. You might need to relay really important information to your head of department. Don't want things to get lost in translation either. So just being clear on things as well, and being proactive. I mean, I would say this is one of the most important things of being a trainee. Like, if you've got one of your actors coming in and they need heated rollers, coming in and turning those heated rollers on in the morning, so you're not wasting any time, can be really, really make you look really good. Having that ability to be able to forward think, oh, we're going to need this later, oh, I've already prepared it, looks great. So yeah, I think that is everything on this slide. Okay. So this is just a little like anecdote from when I was working in film. Just be a sponge. That is what I can just recommend. You've got people around you who are have been in the industry sometimes 20-25 years, and they've been through. You want to just learn as much as you can from them. So I say, you're a sponge. You want to absorb as much as that information as you can. And I think when it's appropriate, like if you've got like a little bit of a quiet period and one of the artists is maybe prepping for the next look or something, it can be good just to ask a question like, oh, what products do you recommend for this type of style? Or things like that. It just makes you look like you're enthusiastic, you're interested, you want to learn more, and that can go a long way as well. So what I would do, I'd always have a small notepad with me, and if there was any sort of useful nugget of information, I'd be like, oh, I'll write that down and I'll go and research it later, or things like that. But I think just showing that you're passionate is the main important thing. Set bag. So if it's sometimes, after you've got your last essay or actor out of the chair, you might stay back at base and, help tidy up or things like that. Or sometimes you might be asked to go to set. So when you go to set with the actors, you're then sort of responsible for maintaining the looks throughout the day. Making sure they look camera ready. If any hair is, moved, you making sure that goes back into the place it should be. So one of the most important pieces of kit you can have is a set bag. I couldn't be without mine. So this is just everything in your set bag. You would take everything that you would need. You'd also have the mothership bag, as I mentioned earlier. But you'd have everything on you that you would possibly need on set. So I've just put a few things that I would have in my set bag. Usually there's more than this. This was just my I end up putting, everything in the kitchen sink in there. But these are sort of main things. So, tissues, wet wipes, cotton buds. If your actor gets a little bit dirty, you've got something to be able to clean them with. So hand sanitizer, always really important. If you're touching somebody's face, and you've just had your lunch, you want to make sure you're all nice and clean and sanitary. Hand cream. I always have hand cream on me. If you're out on location, and it's dry, your hands get dry. It's just a great little thing to have. A grooming kit too. I always keep, nail file, scissors, things like that on me. Mints, that's good for everybody. If you might have just had your lunch and you're just going doing your checks before they go back to set. You want to have mints on you. They might want to. You don't want to be smelling someone's bad breath. And then also, I will always have a little metal palette, especially a metal one, because these can be sanitized as well. But if you're using the same product on two different actors, you never want to use the same brush at all. So you can take a tiny bit of the product and then pop that onto your palette. When you're finished, sanitize it. This is what isopropyl alcohol is for, or IPA. It's alcohol, so it just sanitizes everything. But yeah, having things to keep things sanitary is just really important as well. That's just the sort of general things I would have. But then on the next slide, I think I've put sort of more product-based things that I would have. Yep. So these are just a few of the sort of hair products that I would always have. You always likely want to have hairspray. Got to be glued is like the main one you will always see makeup artists have. You will always see that yellow that yellow canister as well. So I've put in a tancho stick. These are great. It's like a wax, which is really good for sort of any flyaways, but it's really good for the hair. It's like a vegetable oil based. But I will always have one of those in my bag. And a pin box. So these, I've put a picture of the pin box. I have this pin box and they're just fantastic. If you've got little compartments that you can put pins, grips. You might have little clear dental bands because they're quite easy to hide. But you'd put a few of everything in there, so you're covered for anything that you might need. Yeah, so I would say your pin box is super important. I think I've just. Oh yeah, I was just someone asked what flyaways were. Yeah, and then in a set bag as well, I would also have some really important makeup products. So mattifier is I'd never be without mattifier, because there is nothing worse than when you get your actor onto the camera and you see the monitor and they're a little bit shiny and you go, oh no, because often the lighting can change and you see that they look a little bit oily. So having a mattifier that you can just pop on the skin and it will knock back that shine. Yeah, that is one of the most important pieces of the kit that I would always have. You'd have your makeup brushes and your powder puffs for your makeup as well, for application. I always like to take a light moisturizer as well. Often if you're out on location, skin can get quite dry. So just having that on you is a great thing to have. I've also popped in no color powder with a picture of the RCMA one. again, that's great for, you know, knocking back a little bit of shine. And it leaves like no residue. It's like so finely milled that what you know, it won't leave any sort of cast on the face. And then I always like to take a little multi skin tone concealer palette. You know, if someone's suffering with a little bit of redness, you know, you've got something that is able to sort of cover it, and you know that you'll be able to cover any sort of skin tone. So I would always take one of those with me. I also wanted to mention as well that as a trainee, you are not expected to have, you know, everything. You're not expected to have every single different shade of a really high end foundation. But just certainly having a set bag is the main thing I would recommend having. And if you have a few, you know, different shades and things like that, that can also be good, but you're not expected to have, you know, thousands of pounds worth of makeup as well. Because I think that's when I first started out, I thought, oh, I need to buy everything. But that's often, you know, it's not the case. And I also wanted to say as well, if you would also take more specific palettes. So, you know, if your actor has a wig on, you would also take like a pot of wig glue with you, or if, you know, your actor had blood, you would take a little pot of blood with you. But these are just sort of the general things, but you would also take more specific items for that look as well. Yeah, and also it might look like a lot. It might look, you think, how the hell can I fit all of this in this bag? But often, like, makeup artists will decant things. So, you know, you might take your full size product and you scrape a little bit out and put it into a smaller palette. So it just makes it more manageable to be able to take it all in your little set bag. And I've also found taking travel size products. So with hairsprays, you can often get like the mini versions, and they can fit perfectly in your set bag as well. So that's a good little like tip and trick to have. Yeah, I think that, and also better for your shoulders. You wouldn't be surprised, you know, when you're carrying around, you know, your makeup bags and things all day, you know, it can sort of wear out you can feel the sort of pain in your shoulders. So the less weight you can carry and make it a little bit more, you know, better for you is really important. Because obviously if you're standing, you know, for hours a day, it can over time affect your back. But yeah, I think that's everything for this section. Yeah, I just thought as well, it can be quite hard to know where to buy these types of products as well when you're starting out, and where to buy specific things for film and TV, like hair and makeup products as well. So I just thought I'd mention a couple of suppliers of where to look. So you've got Pam, which is Pressures About Makeup, which is a great supplier. And I've also mentioned their Instagram as well, that they do the Tuesday tips. The Makeup Armory, I buy my set bags from the Makeup Armory because I love the layout of them. Tilt, My Kitco as well also do mainly sort of set bags, little like makeup bags, things like that. They do some great brushes, so that is also another place. And Banbury Postiche, when I mentioned earlier about if you wanted to learn more about the wig making process or making hair pieces, that's really good for wig making supplies. And then also for prosthetic based materials, you might go to a bit more of a specific supplier. So you have like Neil's Materials, Bentley Advanced Materials, where I mentioned they also do courses as well. But if you were wanting to do mold making for prosthetics, you might buy your silicons from here as well, and they also do like resins, things like that. You also got Mold Life and Titanic Effects, which do more, you know, prosthetic based supplies as well. think that's everything for this.
Cool. That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Faye. That was awesome. So obviously it's obvious that you're very passionate about the work that you do and especially, the effort that goes into that. So I just wanted to know like what is the importance of passion in your work and how does creative passion help you thrive in challenging environments?
I think it's very important to be passionate about what you're doing. You know, it can be long hours, it can be, quite stressful and intensive as well. So just having that passion to think, okay, push through those things. And I'd say there is nothing more rewarding than when you see the trailer of what you worked on and you go, oh, I actually I had a part in that. And I think there is nothing more rewarding than that. And I think that is always, if you do have like more of an intense day or things don't go quite right, you look at that at the end and go, wow, that was worth it.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my questions. And obviously we spoke about this in the prep for this, but was there a specific or a particular film or a program or someone in the industry that inspired you to seek out makeup and special effects?
Just from watching films when I was younger. So I absolutely loved the film Labyrinth when I when I was younger. If anyone's seen it with David Bowie, and I was just really interested in the creatures and how the because it has a very specific look, that film, David Bowie with his big hair. And so I was just very intrigued. Yeah. And then, as I said, I've grown up living horror, so I've always been interested in like the monsters and how these monsters were made. Really big into watching Predator and Aliens and things like that. And The Thing. I mean, that's incredibly famous for its prosthetics and its monsters designs, and I think that is probably the film that I would have loved to have worked on.
Well, thank you. And one of my kind of questions that I've got is are there any examples of any tech or everyday equipment that's helped you overcome like a challenge, whether that was on a short or on your future skills placement or any kind of like on anything else that you've worked on? Like, has there been a specific time or a resource where you've like, I'm so happy I've got my mother bag?
Just having a well prepped set bag or having a well prepped mothership bag is just so important, just because I think things can change so quickly when you're on set. Especially on sort of short films. If the weather changes all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I've done all this hair and makeup, how do I make sure to preserve it? So just having, you can often get like a rain bonnet, and I will always have one of those in my set bag. So for the event, if the event of it starts raining happening, I've got something that I can protect, like my actor's hairstyle. So yeah, just being prepared, I think, is the most important sort of thing. But yeah, so yeah, having a well prepared set bag has saved me many times.
And are there any particular brands or yeah, any makeup brands, whether that's for special effects or if that's for makeup or even for prosthetics, like are there particular brands and that you like that you kind of continuously work with? And is it hard to keep on top of like new kit that comes out and like new materials and new products? Because I can imagine it's like even just for the general makeup industry, like it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine that it's just the same, if not more overwhelming for film and TV.
Yeah, so you have like your main sort of brands that you might have heard of, like Kryolan, they're also a fantastic brand, and they've been going for years. Then I would say for me, having Skin Illustrator palettes. So these I wouldn't be without Skin Illustrator palettes. So they are alcohol activated palettes. So sometimes if you're using, say, if you had a bruise or, you know, veining, things like that, using cream products can be great, but the longevity of them, you know, over time, they might wear away. Whereas alcohol activated palettes, you use IPA, which I mentioned before, isopropyl alcohol, and that activates the pigment. So you'll spray it in, you'll paint it on almost like watercolors, and when it dries down, it can only be taken off again with that IPA. So, you know, it can last all day. There's a lot of pigment in them. They're just so versatile. You can buy so many different colors as well. So I would say that they are, for me, the most important sort of palettes to have. Yeah, I would say they're most.
Well, are there any products that are coming out or products that are out that you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to try those, or, you know, invest in and have as part of your set bag or your special case of goodies?
That's a good question, actually. So the one thing I have been after, so for prosthetics, it's quite a new sort of thing with 3D printing, to be able to get like texture stamps. So if you're making a prosthetic piece and you want to be able to have skin texture, often you would make that up by hand, but because of the advances in like technology, you're able to buy these. They're like little roller stamps, which have that kind of texture that you want, and then you can roll it on top of your clay. So I'll be really intrigued to sort of see. I haven't bought one yet, but I'd be really intrigued to see, you know, how that would work, whether it would be like a realistic texture. So yeah, I'm intrigued about how you know, 3D printing and 3D scanning is starting to sort of change, especially in prosthetics. Also, I was saying before, like usually if you would do like a life cast and you use like alginate to be able to take a cast of that person's face, but with advancements in technology as well, a lot of people are using 3D printing or 3D scanning, sorry, and being able to sort of scan an actor's face, which kind of eventually might mean that life casting won't be needed anymore, because it can be, you know, quite an intensive process for the actor being covered in so might be a bit more of a comfortable process as well. So I'll be quite intrigued to see how, you know, technology advancements are sort of changing the industry as well.
Cool. Yeah, it's I know there's a lot of concern about AI as well, is in terms of filming, you know, the screen industry, and actually how we can make it more cohesive than opposed to a threat.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into my next question. So essential skills beyond the craft. So what are skills or additional training that have been crucial for you in makeup, special effects, and even hair? Because I know that you've tested
Yeah.
those waters.
Um, so as I said before, I've mentioned about the like some great courses, but one thing I will say that is just, you know, paramount is good hygiene processes. You know, having those practices are just so important, because, you know, you could be touching, you know, 30 people's faces in one day. Just making sure that your hands are sanitary, making sure that you're not sort of double dipping into the same products, you know, especially things like mascara. You know, if you use the same spoolie on one person and then go and use that on somebody else, and someone might have like an eye infection, you have just maybe transferred that to somebody else. So yeah, just having, you know, really thinking about what you're doing with your hands and what products you're using is really important, especially if you're using like cream products, because they can harbor bacteria. You know, like I said before, taking a little bit of the product out with a spatula and putting that onto like a palette and using it separately, and then sanitizing it or using a different palette and doing the same thing, just making sure that you're never sort of cross contaminating is very, very important.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember being a bridesmaid well, I was a bridesmaid last year, and it was really interesting to see how both hair and makeup worked in terms of, because I believe there were 4 or 5 of us bridesmaids, and then obviously the bride, and then obviously from knowing a little bit about makeup in film and TV, and then watching them, I was like, it just applies across the board, whether that's kind of just general in beauty industry, and then it really is transferable, and it's so prominent across all the different industries and sectors.
Yeah, 100%. Like if someone does have any sort of, you know, infection or that can be contagious, if you don't, apply the correct practices, you could be responsible for transferring that to somebody else. So it's absolutely paramount that you're thinking about what you're doing. Especially, like I said, especially mascara. There's so many things, infections that you can have in your eyes, that it's just, so if I had mascara, I would take the actual mascara spoolie out. I would have a disposable one. I would dip once. I would apply it to that person. I would never put that one back in. I would take another clean one, use that. So you just make sure you're never ever, putting a brush back into that same product again.
And are there any health and safety training courses that you did, or that you can recommend, or like any additional resources, or even just like live talk, like webinars and recordings like this?
I would say like first aid training is it's not necessarily a requirement, but I would vouch that is a very good thing to have anyway. It's always good to know how to, I mean, especially on set as well, you do have people who are the medics and who are responsible more for health and safety as well. But I do think it is important as well, just to be able to know if there was an event, something happened, you would be able to deal with it as well. So I think that's what I would say.
And I definitely believe that having just general health and safety first aid training is a real, I think those who are in those positions to employ and recruit do look for that, because then that's more reassurance for the production and actually for the department and the team that you're working with. And like you said, if anything unfortunate was to happen, whether that was with a supporting artist or with the main talent, then at least that's another string to your bow, really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Amazing. So we're gonna go on to the final part of the penultimate part of your talk, Faye. So I was just wondering if Harry could get the slide up about resilience, because obviously this is it can be a very pressured and challenging industry, especially with what's been happening with the strikes, and obviously the pandemic has still had a massive effect on the screen industry. So yeah, over to you, Faye.
Yeah, as you said, like film at times can be quite stressful. You're often working under time pressure. It can be a very, very sort of intense environment. And especially if you're working on a job, say like I did, I worked for 6 months in crowd, and then I did a further sort of 6 weeks. That's quite a long stint on a job. So after doing 13-hour days on like a good day, it could be up to like 13 hours. Creature effects, like I said, I was doing even more intense hours. It can take its toll on you physically and mentally. So I just wanted to talk about the sort of things that I did. It kind of kept me healthy and kept me able to sort of manage stress, eating healthy. And I mean, that goes, for sort of any anyway, but just making sure that you're getting like all of your vitamins. Sometimes, you might be stuck in a studio all day as well. You want to make sure that you're getting all of your vitamins as well. And okay, I put a star next to this one because drink water. It is so easy when it is honestly so easy when you're having a really busy day and you're here, there, and everywhere going to collect things or whatnot, that you get to sort of near the end of the day and you think, wow, I've not even taken a single sip of water yet. So it's just making sure that, even though you are working and it is intense, just taking a few seconds just to look after yourself, because you can't work to the best of your ability if you aren't, not looking after yourself. So I would say just making sure you just get your water bottle and have a drink is so important. Keeping to a regular sleep schedule as well can be just so important. Often you can be doing sort of irregular hours in film, but I just like to make sure, I always said to myself, if I can get 7, it's not always feasible, I will say, but 7 to 8 hours a night of sleep, I knew that was the best, that what I needed to be able to function. I like it's very hard, consistently if you're only having maybe 5 hours sleep. So I just made sure that I prioritized, even if I had to go to bed an hour earlier than I would have liked to, if I knew that was going to get me that 7 hours. That is really, really important. You know, just as I said, when it's intense as well, it can be quite hard to just remember to ring your mum or things like that. So just making sure you do take time out to step out of the film world for a minute and just and go and speak to, spend quality time with your family. That is just so important. I found for me that kept me grounded. If I was, really stressed or anything like that, I could just go speak to my mum. So yeah, I would say that's really important. Just I would say try and keep at least one day of your weekend to yourself and do what you want to do, whether that's, just sitting in a blanket and watching a film with a cup of tea. That's what I enjoyed doing. Or taking up a hobby, that you enjoy, because, so much of your week can be taken up by working in film and your job. So I think it's important to just take some time for yourself, even if that's just a few hours, just to do whatever you want to do. I think that is really important. And just same with like just taking time to rest. You can be on your feet. I think I was doing some days, especially if it was on location, I think I was doing 20 to 25,000 steps a day. You can be doing quite a lot of walking. So yeah, just taking time to rest as well.
Yeah, that's really that's really great. Thank you, Faye. Because my sister, she used to work in a workshop space, and she was like, I haven't seen the sun in. She was like, I don't think I've seen the sun in about 6 months. I think obviously because we live in the UK and that's just how it
Yeah.
is. But I definitely advocate just stepping away from wherever you're working when you can, just having 5 minutes, taking a big deep breath. And like on a day like today, like stand in the sunshine,
Yeah.
stand in the
Yeah.
sunshine, feel the warmth and the sun and the breeze on your face.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and some days just like I definitely appreciate getting on the sofa under a blanket with a tea and like watching a great film.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and definitely taking time to recharge. Um, and then I know that you've got a final slide before we jump onto the Q&A bit.
Um, yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about resilience, in the sense that, as I said before, film can be an incredibly tough industry, even at the best of times. Like by nature of being a freelancer, it can just be tough to get consistent work. Like we've all been there. Anyone who's worked in film, there's you'll finish on a job and you finish and you think, wow, I've got nothing lined up. Am I ever going to work again? And it can be quite terrifying. But yeah, it's you're not alone in that. That is quite common, especially when you're starting out and you don't have the amount of contacts, and you don't have the in the know of knowing when productions are happening, sort of thing. So I think that's just important to be aware of, that there can be periods of unemployment, and it is quite difficult to get consistent work. But while I've had like dry periods, I've tried to make sure that I'm trying to hone in my skills more. You can use the time to sort of try and strengthen those skills, and practice. Look out for like smaller jobs as well, like if there's any short films. Also short films are like really sort of important, especially if you've got anything that's backed by like a body like the BFI or BBC. They're also great ways to sort of keep active while you're waiting for your sort of big role. Yeah, and I was mentioning as well about barbering and hairdressing. Like if you just maybe once a week went and sort of helped out at barbers, and that can be just such a really good way to um keep inspired doing things. And also it looks great on your CV to have like either any hairdressing or barbering skills. It's another sort of string to your bow. Just keep networking, like keep sort of sending your CV out when you can. Obviously don't bombard people, but yeah, looking in Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. And honestly, I'm a true believer that if you really want something, you're really passionate about it, you will get there eventually. So as I said before, I also wanted to mention, as you mentioned, Ella, about the strikes. I just want people to be aware that it's been an incredibly slow period for, there's even sort of designers who are out of work, or have been out of work because the strikes have been, slowed down the industry incredibly. So I just want people to be aware that it might be a bit slower for you starting out at current times, but hopefully the things will start to pick up as well. So, and yeah, the main thing I just want to say, don't give up. Like if you really want this, I like I said, if you really want it, you'll find a way.
Thank you so much, Faye. That was brilliant. So yes, we have 6 questions that hopefully
Oh, okay.
easily get through. So Sarah first asked, have you worked in a makeup/prosthetics workshop? And if you have, what is the difference between working on set versus working in a workshop?
So I haven't actually worked in a prosthetic workshop. So when I worked in prosthetics, I worked on the production. So I didn't work in the sort of making side of things, but that can be like a really interesting. I would love to work in a prosthetic workshop, because I'm myself, I'm really interested in the making side of things as well. But yeah, so working like in prosthetics on a production, as I said before, can be quite intense. They can be quite long hours. So when I worked on Willow, they had already made all of the prosthetics at the workshop, and then they bought it too. So I was filming in Wales, so they bought all of the pre-made prosthetics that were made in the workshop to the production, and then they also send out some artists to apply that on set as well. So I was part of that side of things, the applying and the shooting hours, as opposed to the making side of things.
Cool. And you're wanting to get into that, aren't you, Faye?
Yeah. So at the moment, I actually make molds for miniatures. So it's very sort of similar sort of transferable skills. So I'd be really intrigued working in like a prosthetic workshop.
Excellent. And Sarah also asked, can you talk more about technology like 3D printing and 3D scanning to help you on set? And in particular for prosthetics.
So it's still quite new at the moment, but I know, I think there was a film with Willem Dafoe, and what's it called? I'll remember it, but yeah, so with him, they couldn't sort of, I heard that they couldn't track him down to be able to do a live cast on him. So um, I think he went somewhere where they were able to scan his, yes, poor things, that was it. I was thinking it was something like that. Um, so they were able to do a 3D scan of his face and then send that scan to, so which again is another great thing because you don't actually physically have to have that person in your chair for the live cast. They could get their 3D scan done in America, and then that can be sent over to the UK. And then I believe that they printed, so they printed off the core of it, so of his face, and then was able to sort of sculpt on top of that, so that becomes your sort of your life cast. But yeah, it's still sort of in its early stages. I'm wanting to learn more about 3D printing and 3D scanning myself as well. But I think there is quite a few sort of resources. I mentioned before, I know Neil's Materials. They have some like resources on 3D scanning and how that is going to change things as well, and how it is already sort of integrating its way into the industry. So I would highly recommend reading about that as well.
Fab. And then someone has put, what's the average daily rate for a makeup artist? So they have put for low, so they've put for like low budget features, but I think it might be, I think obviously it depends if you're a trainee on a placement, or it depends if you're on a short film where it is just you who's heading up that department. So if
Yeah.
you could share any insight, that'd be great.
Um, so I think when I was a trainee, when I was working on Willow, it was about, to be honest, instead of me saying it, I think usually Beck 2 have a rate card. So that might be an interesting resource to put in the chat. Is the Beck 2 rate card, because that kind of says, often in film as well, you have different bands. Yes, there we go. There's the rate cards. Yeah, there's often like different bands of productions. So certain bands will have a higher budget. So you might have a little bit more budget for the makeup department, etc. So when I've worked on, short films, might not be getting paid as much as I would when I was working as a trainee on a higher thing, even though the scale of where you are is different. But yeah, so I think it was, when I was a trainee, I think it was about 120 to 130 a day. But I do think I think there's been a bit of a switch up on rates recently. So if you're interested, I would definitely go and check that out.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Harry. And someone has put, do you use social media to promote or gain work? And is this viable to rely on in the future for personal brand?
Yeah, so I would say Instagram is mainly where I showcase my work. I did have a website, and I would say a website is still a good resource, but often, designers will have social media, and if they post a job, the first thing that they're gonna look at if you send your CVs to them is your Instagram account. Or so I'd say Instagram definitely was the most important for me, and I would say is the most important because, like I said, if you are contacting someone, that your page is the first thing that they're going to see. So I would want to put my best work on there as well. So yeah, social media is definitely a big part of your networking and your ways of finding work. And as I said before, there's a lot of Instagram accounts like makeup department jobs, things like that. So you would might DM, or they might give you some like an email contact. So again, they're going to be able to see your work as well. So I would say that is really important.
Amazing. And yeah, sorry, that was another great question of yours. And someone has put, what is your favorite thing about working in the screen industry? Ooh, no pressure, Faye.
Yeah, what's my favorite? Um, I think for me, like my this is magic to me was when I was standing on set on Willow, and we had it was a big castle set that was built, and so they had like the front of this castle, and then like the courtyard, and there was like this sort of fighting scene, and they had these big trolls and pyrotechnics, and I was stood there, and I thought, wow, I can't believe I'm here. Like it's just amazing, all the different locations and all the places that you get to see as well. And I think that's for me, that's never lost its magic. Being able to just be like, wow, 7-year-old me would think I'm really cool right now. So yeah, that was that. I think that was that moment for me.
Wow, I bet it looks amazing.
Yeah,
I bet it
yeah.
was just like so surreal, just like, oh my God.
Yeah, especially because I think that was only a couple of weeks after I first sort of started. So I was just standing there and taking it all in. Like, honestly, I was nearly like crying because I thought, wow, all of this hard work, and I've managed to do it.
Well, you reap what you sow, don't
Yeah,
you? Like that's
yeah,
such a kind of a very long existing phrase. I forgot to ask you a question earlier on. So I know that you mentioned that when whether that's main talent or supporting artists are on set and they're in front of the camera and in front of in front of the lights and whatnot, and then you look through your monitor and you're like, oh no, I didn't mattify them.
yeah.
Are there any departments or head of departments or particular other roles that you connect and liaise with to ensure whether that's just sharing useful information or kind of prepping, in terms of like, before you turn up, like who do you talk to, or whereas on set, like do you have particular teams which obviously you will then work with regularly opposed to your as well as your team?
Costume, like your costume and makeup always seem to be like buddies on set, because you might have an actor that's got a hat on, so you're trying to be conscious of other people's work as well. So if they have a hat, but obviously they're responsible for the hat, and you're responsible for the hair, but if the hat slips, you're going to have to reset the hair, they're going to have to reset the hat. So I think you end up being sort of mindful. Say if there's a costume that maybe has like beads on and the hair is getting caught, it's you want to be mindful that that's their work on the body, and your work is on their hair. So it's just making sure there's good coexisting between both of those sort of departments as well.
Fab. And obviously, I know that you would work really closely with like the assistant director, who essentially is the timekeeper and like the driving force of a production.
Yeah, 100%, especially in crowd as well. They are the driving force, making sure like things are keeping on time as well. So yeah, we would work really closely with those as well.
Fab. And this is just something for me that I just like to ask you is what film has come out recently that you think, oh mate, I wish I worked on that? Like I think Nosferatu.
Yeah, I think people, and you were going to say that, yeah, Nosferatu, I think the makeup is absolutely stunning on that as well. I've seen, I think I mentioned about Pam and in the Instagram account. I'm pretty sure they have posted a picture of it in its full glory, and you can just see the amazing airbrush work, and it's absolutely stunning when because often I've said before as well, in film, you might have worked really hard on something, especially if you've done a big look for an essay, and then they're a little dot in the background. So it's quite nice when you see something in a picture which is in its like full glory, and you could really see on the Nosferatu makeup like all the beautiful little highlights that they've done, and the attention to the detail that might have got lost in the sort of black and whiteness of the film, or it might have got lost in the shadows as well. So yeah, that would have been a awesome thing to work on.
Oh, cool. And yeah, is there any like upcoming film that you think, oh mate, that'd be great to work on? Or is there like an up and coming director or makeup artist that you'd like to collaborate with?
Lord of the Rings. I think there's them I think or Rings of Power. Again, I absolutely loved Lord of the Rings as a child, and I was obsessed with the idea of how the orcs looked. So I feel like that would be a really, really awesome department to work in, just, you know, creating the orcs and the looks for those, because they're all quite unique as well, and that makes it like even more fun to kind of create these characters. Yeah, so that would be awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, especially because I know that in the Lord of the Rings, like they've got different breeds of orcs,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool. And actually, yeah, it's like I could totally nerd out, so I'm not
yeah.
gonna.
Me too. Me too.
Well, thank you so much, Faye. We've got to wrap up now, but yes, thank you so much. You've been an absolutely brilliant guest, and thank you to everyone who submitted those fantastic questions. They were really, really engaging.